Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kaylin Humes. I'm the program manager here at Community Homeworks. And tonight I am joined by special guest, my dad, Chef Ralph Humes. He's going to be helping us put together these gingerbread houses. It's something that both of us have not done before, but we watched all the YouTube videos and took notes and all of that so that you don't have to. Kind of boiled it down to what we thought was the most efficient recipe. So hopefully you find this useful, but yeah, I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. So I think the first thing that we'll do is go ahead and go through all of the items that we'll need. So the ingredients, well, actually, let's start with the non-food related items that you'll need. First thing is some parchment paper. This is super useful, or foil if you don't have parchment paper, that'll work just fine. You'll want some sort of gingerbread cookie template to work off of. You can either make your own. We'll have one linked below that you'll be able to use. Tonight we'll actually be using cookie cutters. I know we cheated a little bit, but this was the easiest way for us to do this. But if you don't have cookie cutters, we will have a downloadable template below that you can use.
So if you're making something more complex, you can use cardboard and tape to build a model.
Yeah. The third thing you'll want to have is a sturdy base for the gingerbread house. So we've got our sheet pan here that we'll be using, covered in parchment paper. But you can use a sturdy piece of cardboard if you would like. Yeah, pan, both of those work well. Just something that you'll be able to hold and transport without there being any mishaps. The next thing that you will need is some sort of knife. Since we're in my dad's kitchen, he has an assortment of knives, all his chef's knives and things, but you don't have to have a chef's knife. I'm sure a butter knife or just a kitchen knife will work just fine. We've also got piping bags for frosting, which we'll get into that later. We bought these from Target in a cake decorating set. If you don't have access to the piping, what are they called? Piping bags? Piping bags. You can use a freezer bag and cut off the corners. So you've got kind of a substitute there if you don't have access to those. Also, what you'll want to do is find a recipe that works for you. We'll have the recipe that we're using down in the description box. So feel free to follow this one along, but I know there's a couple online that you'll be able to use. So before we get started, you'll want to go ahead and make sure that your oven is preheated to 350. So we've already got our set. Make sure to go ahead and get your set. Then we'll go ahead and dive right into this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start off with is making the dough. So we've got our ingredients already measured out here, and we'll have a link to the recipe below so that you can use this exact one. So we're starting off with 6 cups of all-purpose flour. You might need a little bit more once we get into like kneading the dough, but we'll go over that once we get there. You'll need a ½ teaspoon of baking powder, 4 teaspoons of ground ginger, 4 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, a ½ teaspoon of ground cloves or allspice works. We're using cloves tonight, and a ½ teaspoon of salt. One thing I forgot to mention was when you're working with your dry ingredients, you want to make sure that they're sifted. Why is it important to sift your dry ingredients?
It gets all the clumps out, and it totally makes sure that everything is mixed properly.
So once our dry ingredients are all whisked or sifted together, we're going to go ahead and set these to the side and focus on our wet ingredients. So we're using a mixer tonight. We're going to go ahead and hop over there and mix that. So come along with us.
Butter. You ready?
Yep. So 3/4 cup of butter, and make sure it's softened.
And sugar.
And 1.5 cups of packed light brown sugar.
I'm going to mix these a little bit first.
Okay.
we'll add 2 large eggs.
We'll just do the second egg. Grab the molasses.
And lastly, we'll add 1 cup of dark molasses.
So after we mixed the wet ingredients, we're gonna start putting in the dry ones.
Is it how many? Is it 6?
Yeah, yep.
So I'm gonna do 3 and 3.
Okay.
Next, we'll add the remaining dry mix to the dough. And we're gonna mix that until it's all blended together, but it's not gonna be a smooth texture. Just make sure all the ingredients are well blended.
Okay, sweet.
So next, we're gonna be kneading the dough. So place the mixture onto the parchment paper and we're gonna knead it until it's all smooth and combined.
You see what I'm doing, kind of turning it in on itself.
Then using that pressure.
And the warmth of your hands. So that's about ready for me to just form it into a ball now.
Okay. Beautiful.
Now we're going to go ahead and flour our surface to get ready to roll out our dough.
All right, so next what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into the rolling out of our dough and cutting our pieces. We floured our surface so that it doesn't stick. And then
Flour the pin a little bit.
okay, so we'll flour that rolling pin too. And then we'll start rolling it out. You want to talk a little bit about like the best techniques for rolling out?
Like work from the middle. Out. Right?
Okay.
And you're just gonna make a giant circle.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to use more flour so it doesn't stick.
Okay. And I think the recipe calls for like, it's 1/8 of an inch thick is what we want to roll it out to. So after we rolled out all of our cookie dough, what we're gonna do is start cutting out our pieces. So since we've got the cutters, we're going to space it out like so. But if you have like cardboard shapes that you're using, you can lay them out on this surface and then use a knife in order to trace out the shape. So, but again, since we've got our cookie cutters, we're going to go ahead and press down. So we're gonna start cutting off the excess dough that we don't need. And you want to be really careful so that you still keep the shape of the house.
If you notice that your cookie dough is starting to stick to your spatula, go ahead and grab some of that flour that we've got on the side and just dust your spatula so that it won't stick anymore. So now just make sure that your cookie pieces are spaced out on your cookie sheet, and you can cut little accent pieces if you want from the extra dough that's there.
Okay, so next what we're gonna do is go ahead and cut out the shapes in our the sides of our houses and the front and the back. So what we'll do is add like a couple windows, maybe a door. But a little pro tip that we found was that when you're cutting these out, so let's go ahead and start off. We'll start off with a window. You want to make sure that you press all the way in, but we don't want to pull out this piece. The reason for this is if you pull it out before you bake it, it may like warp together and it'll warp the little opening. So we want to try to keep it as crisp and clean of a cut as we can. So we're just going to leave that little piece in there. But again, make sure you cut all the way through, but just leave that little piece in there.
So I did make a little mistake here. I started cutting the window pieces out of the roof of the house instead of the side of the house. But no worries. Gingerbread houses are super forgiving. We'll show you how we fixed it later, but pretty much any mistake that you make, you can fix it with frosting or candy or whatever, but we'll show you what we did in a little bit. So now we're ready to bake our cookies. We're going to place them in our oven for about 11 to 13 minutes. The smaller pieces, you might want to check on them around 5 or 6 minutes just to make sure they don't get burnt, and then pull those out if they seem to be done before the bigger pieces.
So next what we're gonna do is start working on our royal icing. It's really simple, just 2 ingredients. You need 2 2/3 cups of powdered sugar and then 2 egg whites. Okay, so my dad's gonna show us a little technique on how you can get the egg whites. So can you kind of talk us through this?
Here's one way. You can just use the eggshell to separate it. Then separate your yolk there. The second way is you can just let it run through your finger. Which if I'm doing a lot of eggs, I usually do it like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely be doing it with the eggshells. That's a little messy for me. But perfect. Okay, so we've got our egg whites here. Then again, our powdered sugar. So we're gonna pop that in the mixer. And the recipe calls for this to be beaten stiff. Can you kind of explain what that means, Dad?
Stiff just means that your peaks, it calls for stiff peaks. So they're just gonna stay when you dip your spoon in there.
Yeah.
The peak is gonna stay.
Gotcha. So it's not runny or anything. Sweet. So what the recipe calls for is half of the powdered sugar and the 2 egg whites. We're going to be mixing those together first until smooth, and then we'll add the rest of it in later. The rest of the powdered sugar. Oh, I have to mix everything in. Yeah. And then this one, I'll just get the stiff piece. Mix the rest in.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
You know.
That's so much
So we're
better.
gonna load our bag up.
Yeah.
These are your stiff peaks. Look at that. See?
Yeah. Oh,
That's
so
a
no
stiff
drip.
peak.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. Looks much better than the first time around.
Right.
I want to clip this so it doesn't get too.
I'm gonna use this one, I guess.
Okay.
It's being annoying.
Oh, do you want me to hold the other side?
Yeah, this is gonna be messy.
There we go.
Try to contain as much as I can.
Yeah.
You good for a second?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. I'm moving this up. I mean, it's probably gonna need all of it,
Okay.
but I don't know that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just kind of press it down. Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
If we need this, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
So once you've got your dough in your bag, you want to like press it until it gets to the corner where either you cut your opening, or if you've got a little like metal insert in there, you just want to press it until it gets to the corner. And also I wanted to mention, with the leftover frosting that you have, make sure to put a damp towel over the bowl so that your frosting doesn't dry out. So now we're going to pull our cookies out of the oven. We're not going to let them cool down completely because we need to cut remove our cutout pieces. So what you'll see me doing is grabbing our cookie cutters and going back over those the lines that are there. We're going to press the cookie cutter in and then actually remove the pieces this time.
So next we've got a little another pro tip that we saw online on how to make stained glass windows for the gingerbread house. So really the only things that you will need is some hard candy. We'll be using Jolly Ranchers today. We've got a couple different flavors. We've got the green, the blue, and cute little pink color to put in there. What else do we need? A hammer or a meat mallet or something hard that you can hit things with. And a few of these Ziploc bags. First, what you want to do is divide up all your Jolly Ranchers by flavor. So we've got our blue raspberry here. What flavor is this? Green apple here. And then I think this is a mixture of a couple, but we've got 2 cherry and 2 watermelon, but they're close enough to the same color, so it's totally fine. And what we're gonna do is unwrap them and place them in these baggies here. So we're laying a couple towels down too, just to kind of minimize the noise and the damage that'll be done. I'm grabbing our hammer. All right, let's see what that looks like. Oh, perfect.
Maybe too much.
No, that's actually perfect.
Is it?
Yeah, it's enough little pieces in there. So we'll do that for all of the flavors. Deep full. Here, let's go.
What do you think?
I just hear him walking. Oh, yeah, keep the over there.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sweet. Once our candy is crushed in our Ziploc baggies, we're going to go ahead and sprinkle in the little pieces into our window cutouts. Make sure to do it one flavor at a time. I just found that it melts a little bit better together if you've kind of got it divided up into sections within the little window cutout. So you'll see me doing that here. Once you've got the crushed candy in there to your liking, we'll go ahead and pop this pan into our oven at 350 for about 3 to 5 minutes. Definitely check it after 3 minutes just to make sure everything's melting together smoothly. So once it's done, it should look something like this. The candy should be completely melted and create kind of a beautiful stained glass effect. You'll want to make sure that before you remove it from the pan, make sure that the cookie and the candy is cooled down completely. You don't want it to still be sticking to the pan. And also, don't mind if the candy starts to bubble a little bit when you pull it out. That's totally fine. It'll settle once it's completely cooled.
All right, so now we've just finished the stained glass windows for our houses. So one step that we forgot to mention was in order to get the sides even, you want to take a, what's this called? Like
A grater.
A grater. Take a grater and grate this. Is that the word, grate?
Yes.
Okay, so grate the sides so that you've got real even sides here that you're working with. Just as they bake, the cookies will expand a little bit. So again, we just want to make sure that we're working with smooth sides. The first thing that you want to make sure that you have, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but you want to make sure you have a really sturdy base. We'll be using another sheet pan, but feel free to use a really sturdy piece of like cardboard, not cardstock, or a sheet pan like we're using. We've got our royal icing. That's what we'll be using to stick everything together. It's a real thick, pasty or stiff consistency, so it should dry out really well. But the first thing that we're going to start off with is putting the base portion of the house together. So the 4 sides of the home, excluding the roof. So we'll go ahead and remove the roof pieces to the side for right now. Okay. So what we'll do, we'll start off with one corner of the house. Okay. So we've got our, what they call it, like a pipeline of frosting here. So we're just gonna put some at the base between our sturdy base and the first piece of cookie. And then,
Should I put some more on this base?
Oh yeah, we can put a little bit down. Let me squeeze it a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Then a little here.
Okay. All right. You might need to hold it just to press it in for a few seconds. And then they said too to put some in the creases here on the inside. Hold this. You want to just make sure to fill any of the gaps that you have with some of that royal frosting just to create a little more stability. So I add the second side on here now. Oh yeah, you want to step to this side. Same thing. Awesome. Makes sense to put some on the outsides too. And then side here. Now the front house, I'm going to put some on fire.
Then I'll go and get the inside for you.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Get the inside and outside of the house. Maybe the inside one. Okay. Beautiful. Awesome. Okay. So this is what your base here should look like. You can see we've got it on all 4 sides on the inside here, just to cover any of those gaps that might be there and create that really strong, sturdy base. And then we put it here too, between the bottom of our bottom and the house.
Now we're going to place our house to the side and let it set for at least an hour. You can check it within that time just in case it dries a little bit faster, but just set it aside until that icing sets completely.
So as you can see, we made a little oopsie here. I tried to cut the windows out on the roof. But as you'll see in next episode, we'll be able to cover this up pretty easily. Like I mentioned before, gingerbread houses are really forgiving. So pretty much any mistake that you make, you can clean it up with something. So we're gonna go ahead and add some of the royal icing here on the sides of the roof. And then on the sides of the house after that. Okay. Let's do one side at a time. We'll lay this out.
I mean, it's so much better than last time.
Yeah, this is it's so much better. Okay. Maybe should we put some there? Or do you think? Oh, okay. Oops. You can see. Maybe do the same thing back here. Second piece on.
One down the middle.
Yeah. We might have to put a little extra too because some of the gaps are a little thick. There we go. Put some on the front there too. So now we're just gonna go in and fill any gaps that are there. And maybe one of these glasses might work to kind of hold it up.
Yeah.
Sweet. There's something smaller. Okay. If you need to, while it's drying, you can put like glasses or cans or something on the sides of the roof to kind of hold that up until it hardens a little bit. So we'll go ahead and let that sit for a second, and then we will come back.
All right, so we're just about to wrap up, but this is what your house should look like for right now. We're gonna let it sit for at least an hour so that royal icing can really harden. And when we get into the decorating next week, we'll have a real sturdy house that we're working with.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us for the first episode of our gingerbread workshops. So join us next week. We'll be talking about decorating. We'll do some frosting 101, kind of how to color your frosting, what candies to use, all of that fun stuff. We'll see you. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Again, this is my dad, so he'll be back next week too. But yeah, thank you.